This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mins.
The incision took place at the top of the back of the neck, where the skull meets the spine. The organic chip was to be placed deep inside a drilled crevice that sat in the soft tissue of the brain. The chip would then expand into a series of branches that spread throughout the cortex and pulsated according to the information to be processed. The onboard micro-Wi-Fi fed the X-Hero chip with updates throughout the life of the specimen, and the lifespan was the duration of the host. This was because the neurons fed pulsating signals that triggered an electromagnetic response. The device was originally used for spinal injuries to allow those who had experienced significant trauma the ability to reconnect the pulses that were severed, allowing the host to feel sensations below the spinal severance and control their legs with sustained and meaningful movements. Over the course of the next 30 years of adoption, the wellness and self-improvement movements adopted the technology, causing a backlog in orders to fulfill the desires of the rich and powerful in their attempts to expand their mental prowess. Thomas was in the latter camp. He was 25, a graduate of the Juilliard School. He had perfected his craft using the method technique and was burnt out. 3 Oscar nominations in 4 years had demanded an audience of him and his efforts. He accepted the Broadway offer, 40 weeks at 5 nights a week. The exposure was monumental. The show began in a month, the lead having dropped out 2 days prior. Now was his opportunity to progress amongst the ranks of the greats and show that he was not just a celluloid darling. He was someone who could showcase their enormous skill and technique in a live capacity, nightly. The Domino Conspiracy was a courtroom drama that was first produced off-Broadway by David Mamet and had since developed a cult following. Most New Yorkers and visitors felt it was a rite of passage to see a preview at least once. The novelty of the performance lay in its adaptability. Oftentimes, the accused would be released without further charge, or the charges would be dismissed by the judge. The facts varied according to the director in charge. Some weeks, the story would take dramatic turns. Other weeks, it would progress as originally intended, mirroring its run from the 70s. It was always Mamed's intention to allow the work to be fluid, keeping both the audience and the cast on their toes regarding the direction the fate of the accused would take. Usually, decisions would reflect assumptions about guilt and innocence based on the prevailing public mood. During the Black Lives Matter movements of the early 2020s, the fictional cases would be dismissed due to revelations of hidden miscarriages of justice. This narrative twist made national headlines. It was the first dramatic transformation of the play since the 1980s, with director Stuart Cowper making his mark on the circuit with finesse, daring to go where no established writer or director had ventured before, for fear of disrupting the established vanguard. Now, Cowper had returned to helm the play after a 20-year hiatus, and he wanted Thomas as his lead after his first choice dropped out. No one has a grasp of Mike the prosecutor the way I can see Tommy playing the role. That includes Vince Damony. I don't have a problem saying it now without the evidence in front of me that Tommy will play a better Mike Greenbay than Vince Damony. The quote drew the ire of the Hollywood elite, but served to cement his proclamations among the theater snobs that he was the director of the moment. If it wasn't already evident, for Thomas, this was the opportunity of a lifetime. He had 4 weeks to learn his lines as they were known and written. Cowper had intended to deviate mid-season. All of New York was abuzz with those involved in the production and the promise of a change. Tickets had sold out within hours, and the availability for seating across the entire run would remain on standby only. At the height of his career, Tommy celebrated the anticipation of his Broadway debut with a binge. It started at a friend's penthouse on a Friday and ended 3 weeks later. He had consumed 55 liters of vodka, 250 grams of cocaine, 3,000 cigarettes, and 1,000,000 calories in fried foods. His off-season spiral led him to miss rehearsals, sending the insurance company backing the production into a panic. Cowper was worried but remained steadfast publicly. He knocked on Thomas's door at 3 p.m. on the afternoon of April 8th. He had given Tom enough time to wake from his hangover. Thomas opened the door in a bathrobe and underwear. "You fucked the whole thing up," Cowper said, storming inside. Thomas was still rubbing his eyes. "I hope this bender is over. We're opening in 3 days," he yelled. "It is, I swear," said Thomas. "You don't realize what's resting on this entire production, do you? You've got the whole crew offside. This won't bode well for 40 weeks. Why the fuck do you think we fired Damony?" Thomas strolled over to his couch, stained with ash and burns. He pulled a cigarette from behind his ear, lit it, and sat down. "I'm sorry. I got carried away," he said. "I don't care about having fun. Believe me. Just don't fuck me over when you do. Got it?" Tommy nodded as he dragged on the cigarette. "Now look, the reason I'm here is—" Cowper took a seat and caught his breath. "We're having a preview run tomorrow night. Times reviewers will be in attendance, plus their guests. The theater caught wind of it and extended invitations to about 100 others, luminaries, writers, art snobs, a few actors and directors. Word's gotten out that we're in trouble, and they're lining up to tear shreds off this show. The tickets are still on standby, mind you. No wonder they want to see us fall." "Stu, I don't know my lines," Thomas said, exhaling sharply. "I fucking know, but I can't hold them back. I thought we had a week and a half to iron you out, but it turns out we have hours. That's why I need you to come with me, right now." "Where?" "I have a car downstairs. Don't ask, just come." The chauffeur drove over the speed limit through the tunnel to Queens, where the surgery office accepted expedited requests for after-hours procedures. Such was the panic Cowper had injected into the situation. "This is for life, Stu. For life," Thomas protested. "Haven't you ever fantasized about having one installed?" "I mean, maybe when I first heard of them. They're life-changing. You'll never have to worry about forgetting a thing again. Names, addresses, birthdays, experiences. Some say you can relive entire holidays or moments in time simply by closing your eyes and using your imagination. The images fill your brain and expand your senses beyond the original event. I've even heard that the memory can be more gratifying and rewarding than the experience itself," Cowper said as the SUV pulled into the underground car park. "But they dig a tunnel into my head," Thomas protested as they exited. Cowper held him by the shoulders. "You'll never have to learn your lines again. You can take a job and focus on your craft, not the words on the page. Remember all those Oscars you lost? You think you're going to lose them again after this?" The muffled voices of the attendees shuffled through the aisles as they air-kissed one another. These were the ones who had braved the intense lineup that had formed as a result of the increased security measures. A bomb threat had been called in, based on a rumor circulating on conspiracy forums that Cowper intended to tackle the United States' involvement in the Pacific and the latest war game operations, actions that had led to many servicemen and women facing criminal charges upon returning from their special operations abroad. It was the first time the government had attempted to prosecute its own soldiers for carrying out missions under orders issued by the government. Die-hard supporters of the president were furious, and word had spread that all involved in the production could be at risk. The theater district, heavily reliant on its tourist trade, took no chances with safety. The employment of 100 screening officers and metal detectors significantly slowed the seating process for the 7:30 p.m. showtime, yet no one who had made it through seemed to mind. The security screening extended to the cast and crew as well. Thomas saw the delay as an opportunity to leave his apartment 30 minutes later than necessary. He wanted to consume narcotics beforehand in the safety of his home. They helped with the phantom pain from the incision at the back of his head, at the base of his skull. The knowledge of its insertion 13 hours earlier was disconcerting. He had always had a fear of bodily interruptions. This procedure brought him no solace, despite his newfound ability to recall phone numbers, email addresses, faces, street names, and even the contents of the pharmacy down the road for quick reference whenever he needed a specific hair conditioner his former girlfriend loved to purchase. He wore a hoodie and sunglasses as he lined up with the punters to enter the building. All eyes were on him, and smiles were exchanged along with excitement and well wishes, but no one dared interrupt his progression through security. He was the one they had all come to see on stage. They weren't prepared to ruin that opportunity out on the street beforehand. When word spread of Thomas's position in the line, attendees offered up their spots to help him move forward. He reached the front in no time, with no complaints from anyone who had been waiting patiently. The security guards lowered their wands and waved him through the metal detectors. With a smile, he walked through and felt a click and a pop in his head as he passed the magnetic readers. He blinked slowly as he stood there, momentarily trying to understand what had occurred. The suit was a three-piece, with a kerchief that matched his tie. They gave him glasses with clear lenses. Makeup was purposefully toned down, in line with the historical approach that had been taken since 1976 and the first rendition under Mamet's direction. There was a pulse in the air, collectively exhilarating, as if lightning was about to be harnessed in the arena. A full house sat in anticipation, ready to see masters of their craft at work. Thomas was placed in position, stage left. He gave another long blink. He heard the audience and knew what was expected of him. The curtain raised, and the applause was overly gracious from the majority and magnanimous from the few who were envious. As it subsided, Thomas gave another slow blink. He knew who he was, he knew what he was, but he didn't know how to deliver. Something didn't add up inside he couldn't process. Was it a line, a walk, a conversation? Was he meant to be up here or down there, watching and observing from afar? Had he dreamt of this moment, and that image was now so firmly harnessed in his mind that it gave off an aura of reality, now showcasing itself while he sat somewhere else with his eyes closed? He looked at their faces, masked in the dark beneath the lights that had begun to warm his own. Their expectant faces. They sat there patiently at first, then slowly began to agitate, as if they collectively realized that what was happening was not meant to be happening at all. "I'm dreaming this," he said. "I can change this. I just need to concentrate." A few laughs rang out. Perhaps he was right. Maybe that was the script speaking, not his own reaction. The script was in his brain somewhere, uploaded 30 minutes after the procedure. He had observed it last night before he slept. It was there. He was sure of it. He just needed the chip to take over. "Does the chip do the work, or do I work the chip?" he said to the audience. This time, there were no snickers, just murmurs and quiet conversation. A breaking between the fourth wall and the audience, an interruption of their experience as they were dragged into the light of the unseen barrier that separated performance from reality. An unwanted breach. He was alone in a courtroom. He started to panic. He held his fingers to his temple and forced himself to remember the lines. "I'm sorry. I just need a minute," he said, reluctantly continuing the break in dimension. He knew now that he wasn't dreaming. This wasn't a memory or an imagination calculated with accuracy. This was real. This was now. His chip wasn't working. He didn't know his lines, and he was bombing. A call rang out from the rear of the theater. It wouldn't be discovered for 72 hours that it had come from a security guard who had bypassed the measures put in place by the theater. "Don't play games with war," he yelled. Thomas took a long blink. The audience yelling back hadn't factored into his panic. He wondered if this was an elaborate scene constructed by his subconscious. Perhaps he was still under general anesthetic and the chip was still being installed. He thought to himself. The bomb let out a hue that was masked beneath the stage lights. Screams were on the verge of breaking out, but were silenced by the explosion. The escape into the void was instant. All went dark. Thomas continued to imagine, not knowing if the imagination was real or the real was now the imagination. He found he could play the scene back in his mind over and over again. He was able to see details and translations that had not been evident in the moment. This further confused his perception. Time played on in this recurring prison. The show continued, with him on stage, attempting to remember his lines and failing, all eyes on him, glued to him. They sat there and watched him destroy his career, over and over and over again. At some point, he wondered how many thousand renditions of the opening he had performed before the fireball had saved him.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.